Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn webinar, The Kumbaya of Managing Millennials, brought to you by Archer Point. I'm Suzanne Scanlon, Marketing Manager here at Archer Point, and I've been in sales and marketing positions in the ERP space for more years than I'd like to admit. I'm also a Millennial Wrangler, and last year at the NAVA User Group Summit, which is a user group conference for Microsoft Dynamics customers, a colleague of mine and I presented on this topic. It was well received, so I decided to provide an encore session in webinar format, and we'll actually be repeating it with NAVAG in July as well. So if you want to invite somebody to that, send me an email afterwards. Today's webinar is designed to help you understand the impact that millennials have on the workforce, better manage them, and provide you with sound advice on how to hire, develop, and retain them. Our agenda today is covering who are millennials, conflict in the workplace, and again, managing, hiring, developing, and retaining millennials. Millennials, Gen Y, Gen Next, Echo Boomers, whatever you call them, they are the nearly 80 million young adults born between 1976 and 2011. Give or take a few years on either end depending on who you ask, who either already have or are preparing to join the workforce. By the year 2025, millennials will make up a staggering 75% of the workforce. The sheer number of millennials, coupled with the relative lack of Gen Xers and the increasing retirement of baby boomers, means that employers will be facing leadership gaps, and they will be looking to millennials to fill those gaps. So we need to get used to working with them. We'll start with something you may have already noticed. There are apparent differences in how generations relate to work. Understanding those differences is the first step in overcoming them and embracing the, statistically speaking, most highly educated workers in our ranks. In this chart, we can note that the managers are generations prior to millennials, Gen X and prior, and we're going to dig a little deeper into these differences. This and the previous slide comes from a Maximizing Millennials in the Workplace white paper by UNC Kenan-Flagler Business School, and it refers to the pre-millennial generations as Cowboys. This graphic is a great summary of the differences, where Cowboys are expect command and control style of management. Millennials expect active, involved leadership. Individually focused work for the Cowboys versus collaboration and teamwork for millennials. Millennials expect employability, whereas Cowboys expect job security. And millennials expect influence through networks and communities, whereas us Cowboys expect influence through organization and our position within it. As you can imagine, these stark differences can lead to misunderstanding and potentially workplace conflict. Let's take a look at our SEEN today. And SEEN is an acronym for Speed, Convenience, Entertainment, Nurture, and Entitlement. So because millennials have always known speed, convenience, etc., they may interpret things that are not as bad because they don't know any different. Take, for instance, entertainment. Sure, boring is boring, but when there's nothing to do, creativity is inspired. They may also be risk averse because they've been nurtured not only at home but in school throughout their lifetime. When things are not easy, if they're not convenient, they may see it as hard because they're used to convenience. But when things are hard, we learn, right? We learn to overcome obstacles as well and to persevere. So just chew on this. To millennials, life is a cafeteria, and all the choices are good. So they're accustomed to following their passion, picking and choosing what works for them. We're going to jump right into the heart of this and talk about managing millennials first. So millennials prefer to work in groups. They're known for crowdsourcing and they value input from a diverse group. They can make their own decisions, but they really value the input from a diverse group. An IBM study stated that millennials believe they make better business decisions when there were a group of people providing input. But the Gen X response to the same question was even higher. So both millennials and Gen X feel their leaders are most qualified to make decisions, and baby boomers are the outlier here. Our key takeaway with this is that millennial workers, like Gen X workers, want to have group consensus when it comes to decision making. As a manager, you need to address this in two seemingly conflicting ways. First of all, you need to value the importance of the group, and instead of just laying down the law and dictating decisions that will affect the whole group, you must involve your team or at least show them why the decision was made. Your team will work better if they feel that the entire group is valued and in it together. Secondly, you must treat each person as an individual. The group is made up of individuals, not generational stereotypes. They may enjoy working and deciding as a group, but we all want to be seen as individuals. As we all know, millennials are adept at using technology. They've grown up with it, they expect it, they prefer it. They will try to inject new technology and workflows into your organization or into their work group. And while technology is the norm for millennials, they actually prefer face-to-face collaboration, which when I first read about this seemed counterintuitive to me, but it's actually true. So our key takeaway here is that millennial workers are naturally fluent in technology and will adapt and adopt it into your workflow quickly. As a manager, you must understand that technology isn't novel. It's always been there, and just as older generations slept for new technology because it was something they were not used to, millennials may crave a sans technology approach in communication. Remember, people and connections are very important to them. Not all technological changes suggested by millennials, however, will be valuable. They may cause problems for the team. Mixing millennials and older generations will likely be a cause for compromise when it comes to technology, and truly evaluating which tools can improve efficiency and which ones will be an unnecessary roadblock for your other workers is an important step to take. Millennials desire, should I say crave, need regular feedback. They have a very different social mindset. They're used to getting that instantaneous and constant feedback. This does tie back to their need to be constantly growing and learning. And the feedback that they get encourages them to continue on. So our key takeaway here is that not all of your team will want the same kind of feedback that millennials prefer. Provide your team the feedback they need on an individual level. You can still have your twice-a-year reviews, but may need to provide informal feedback between that for some. Dr. Joanne Sujansky and Jan Ferrari Reed suggest that you may also need to change how you approach negative feedback when dealing with millennials, couching it first in a positive affirmation before addressing an issue that needs to be changed. Additionally, you may want to create mentorship programs so that millennials have direct access to hear the constant feedback that they and feel that they're valued. Millennials are motivated differently. They're motivated by the prospect of creativity, change, and social connections rather than typical motivations of high salaries and moving up the ladder. They want to feel fulfilled in their work. This provides a few challenges for managers, with one key issue being that millennials may feel frustrated if their ideas don't seem to go anywhere or take too long to be acted on. They don't have the patience for typical business hierarchies, instead associating the speed at which they can research and solve problems as the same speed in which change should occur. While you cannot and should not always accommodate that fast pace, Put into place a mechanism where new ideas that the group deems valuable do have an opportunity to go forward quickly. Their creativity and the implementation of ideas feeds the sense that they have value and are doing something that matters to your company. Millennials want to feel that they're doing something to help others. They want to work for a company that has a reputation for caring about people and important causes, or at the very least allows them to be active in supporting those causes themselves. So they're typically more concerned with helping people in need than earning a high salary. So it might behoove you to offer them more than a chance to earn a buck. Should also offer flexibility. They want flexibility not only in how they do their job, but when and where. And they will sacrifice pay if it means a better work-life balance. Our key takeaway here is with millennial workers, their lives aren't reshaped to fit the job. It's the other way around. And while not every job and position can accommodate this level of flexibility, find ways to give them that work and life balance so they don't feel that their personal lives are sacrificed for the betterment of your company. For example, encourage them to pursue outside projects and interests to prevent burnout and negative feelings directed towards their position in your company. Let them design their own work hours at the office by maybe setting up a block of time when you want everyone there, but letting each worker determine how early they will come in and how late they will stay on either side of that block of time. If it suits your business, create seasonal hours in the summer where each employee has maybe a 4-day work week with some with Mondays off, some with Fridays off, or let them create a 4-day work week by working a longer day to make up for the extra day. I realize that this isn't feasible for every company, so you've got to do what works for you, but flexibility is very important to millennials. The truth is that millennials are not all that different from previous generations in the most important aspects of work, including ethics, habits, and teamwork. They sometimes get a bad reputation for being lazy or self-centered, but that's really not the case, at least in my research and in my personal experience. That IBM study I mentioned earlier reveals something remarkable. Millennials really aren't all that different from previous generations and are quite similar to Generation X. In fact, if there was a generation that stood out as taking an unusual approach to work, it would probably be the baby boomers. And then I just found this quote interesting. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but basically it just is reiterating that the millennial generation want access to bosses to be mentored, coached, and for their bosses to show an interest. And when they don't get that, they start to ask, why am I here? Let's move into hiring millennials. Remember, people are people. Sure, there's a lot of talk and even consulting businesses that are cashing in on generational conflict in the workplace. And yes, there are some generational differences on average that we've discussed up to this point. But keep in mind that there are sharper distinctions between individuals than there are between generations. It is individuals, not generations, that make up the workforce. Assuming that millennials are this way or that way isn't effective when it comes to hiring. You want to hire the best as you always have, right? Don't limit yourself by assuming based on age. However, there are some things you need to keep in mind when recruiting millennials. Make sure that they understand your company's mission, your sustainability stance, and how you better the lives of others. This is important to them, and it should be important to you. Another thing is keep in mind that they crave that personal interaction. So before you hit send on that email, you may want to just pick up the phone and make a call. It might better serve you. You also want to ensure that the opportunities they have to grow, learn, and lead are clearly outlined. And don't forget the flexibility they desire. Do you offer flex hours, work from home options? Additionally, if a millennial is faced with choosing to work for similar companies, that compensation will be a deciding factor. So now that you've hired a millennial, let's talk about how we keep them. A 2016 Deloitte survey notes that millennials have one foot out the door. In fact, 66% expect to leave their current position within 5 years. This is cause for concern. Remember, millennials are more concerned about employability than job security. So how do we combat this issue? For starters, you can give them opportunities for leadership development. With the recent trend of flattening organizations, there are fewer opportunities to move into management. It's sometimes easier to find a new job than to find new opportunities within your current company. If your organization doesn't have a corporate ladder per se, you can take small steps to help employees develop leadership skills, such as creating mentoring programs and providing leadership training. In that same Deloitte study, they talk about the purpose gap, which refers to the difference between what millennials want out of business and what business offers them. They feel the success of a business should be measured by more than just its financial performance. Note that millennials are not opposed to focusing on profit. They are not anti-profit. They would simply advise against placing too much emphasis on short-term profit maximization. So what are other metrics that they feel are important? Skills, income, and satisfaction levels of employees, creating jobs, and providing goods and services that make a positive difference in people's lives. And while you may have hired them for peanuts, one study I read about notes that those fresh out of college excuse me, are ready to put their skills to the test. They will forego high pay and sacrifice having to live with mom and dad for a bit just to get out in the workforce. But you can't keep them at that pay rate and expect them to stay. You also want to, don't ever forget the feedback, right? You need to tell them how they're doing instantly and often. A coworker of mine noted that she had a mentor once who believed in giving feedback in a sandwich that the receiver could digest. The manager explained that when giving negative feedback, you start with a positive about the person's work. For instance, I appreciate how much effort you've put into this project. You've really given a lot of yourself and it shows. Then follow that with the meat of the feedback and make your comments constructive about what it is they need to improve. Then build them back up by closing the sandwich with another positive comment on a trait of theirs that is good that can help them successfully tackle the negative. I know how much knowledge you have about this client and their needs, and that great knowledge is what will give you the ability to tackle this challenge head on. My colleague said that she witnessed this work with people who would have otherwise been defensive or even cried at negative feedback. But by starting with a positive, it helps the receiver to feel like you aren't attacking them. And by ending with a positive, it suggests a solution and helps them feel like you believe in them and you see it as a challenge that they are responsible for overcoming and that they can. It's not like a personal flaw. I've also heard others talk about this positive, negative, positive feedback technique, well, to not be effective. So my suggestion is give it a try. It might actually work with millennials because it was from non-millennials that poo-pooed it. Anyway, just some other reminders when you are giving feedback, and I think this really applies to pretty much any generation, is that our feedback is believing, not berating, explaining, not exclaiming, and inspiring, not insulting. So I want to cover some lessons that we've learned. Here at Archer Point, we have an intern program we've been doing. I think we're going to be going on our 4th year for our summer intern program, working with the Carlson School of Management out of University of Minnesota. And I chatted with our intern program architect, who's quite involved with the interns during these programs, and wanted to share with you some lessons learned there. She noted that they want to be managed, but not micromanaged. except for when you need to. And she said she thinks this is different based on different personality traits. She said that since many are still in school or just graduating college, there's a transition from being told what to do and having the freedom to figure it out themselves. Many of them seek chronological tasks similar to their school projects. And she also noted, once again, they cannot get enough feedback. They are hungry for it and expect immediate, daily, weekly, monthly feedback from multiple sources. I know for some of us older generations that can be draining, but again, the multiple sources I think is also key if we kind of spread that burden out, right, that they're getting that feedback from multiple sources. They seem to, she noted that they seem to prefer in-person or face-to-face meetings, and she felt that was surprising considering the amount of social networking that they do. But studies have found the same. They have endless amounts of energy and a hunger for learning. And then she also shared what she found in a white paper entitled The Benefits of Real-Time Feedback. And it starts off with what millennials want from their boss. They want to help them navigate their career path, give them straight feedback, mentor and coach them, sponsor them for formal development programs, and they also want a boss that is comfortable with flexible work schedules. Again, just kind of reiterating what we've already talked about. The white paper also noted what millennials want from their company. They want a company that will develop their skills for the future, that has strong values, that offers customizable options in their benefits and reward package, that allows them to blend work with the rest of their life, and offers a clear career path. And then what millennials want to learn. Technical skills in their area of expertise, self-management and personal productivity, leadership, industry or functional knowledge, and creativity and innovation strategies. So millennials born after 1990 are a whole new batch of students and referred to as the IY generation by a gentleman by the name of Tim Elmore. I heard an interesting story, saw Tim speaking, and he's actually is one of those consultants that helps companies manage millennials and work through some of the conflict that comes about of bringing on this new generation into the company. He said that a high-tech company in Atlanta has seen on multiple occasions recently where they make a job offer to a recent college grad, and they get a call back requesting that the company or the manager who's making the offer be interviewed by a parent. And I'm using my air quotes now to ensure that you will make a good boss. In fact, Tim Elmore shared that the statistic that 1 in 8 millennials bring a parent to interview in some way, shape, or form. Needless to say, this is taking nurture to an unhealthy extreme, and these kids didn't get the job. So with that story fresh in my mind, I wanted to leave you with this quote. You know, it's basically all of our jobs, I think, if we're involved in this younger generation, to prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child. And also recommend Tim's book, which is called Generation IY, Secrets to Connecting with Today's Teens and Young Adults in the Digital Age. And if reading a book isn't on your to-do list, he does have a blog site called growingleaders.com. So I also wanted to share with you from one of Tim's blogs 4 mistakes that Tim discusses parents have been making of late. Number 1, they risk too little. Think about playing on and falling off the monkey bars as a child. This helped older generations develop motor skills. They rescue too quickly, allowing the child to work through issues, builds problem-solving skills. They rave too easily. Sure, we want kids to have self-esteem, but we should be affirming achievements. And 4, we roar too frequently. Participation trophies may work for 5-year-olds, but by the time they're 8, they don't mean anything. And I do not mean to offend or insult anyone that is a parent today, but definitely some food for thought on how we're raising children differently today. No lectures from me here. I don't have any children. All right. I saw this post on Twitter, and to me, it kind of summarized everything we've just talked about, right? Old thinking versus new thinking. And I know it's maybe difficult to see on some of your screen sizes, so I'll just highlight some of the ones where the new thinking is employees are the biggest asset, and the old thinking was employees are the biggest risk. It's open communication over top-down communication. Empowering results versus managing time. Flexible work schedules versus rigid work schedules. Mobility versus being at your desk. Doing something you love versus working for the weekend. Corporate jargon is the old way, and genuine honesty is the new. Double standard versus one standard. Fear of failure is the old way versus failing often and fast so we can move on and learn from our mistakes. So I hope that also gives you some more food for thought. And as we move into the Q&A, hopefully you guys have some questions. I also wanted to share, I read an article stating that new Nielsen research shows that Gen Xers are more active on social media than millennials. Granted, it's not by much, but still, I was a little surprised, and I must admit, guilty. While Gen X doesn't have a particularly wide lead when it comes to social media use, it's standing at Nielsen's top spot is still surprising considering how much industry chatter is put towards the idea that millennials are more glued to their screens than almost any other demographic group. Yes, I was surprised as well, but I guess I'm not. Anyway, I just wanted to pause for a moment, see if we have any questions or any hands raised. I'd love to hear your personal experiences. All right, doesn't look like we have any questions at this time. All right, everyone. Well, if anything comes to mind afterwards, please feel free to send me an email or went to info@archerpoint.com or scanlon@archerpoint.com. We appreciate you being with us today. We hope you found this webinar valuable. Feel free to use the info@archerpoint.com to make suggestions for future webinar topics. We'll be happy to address those. This concludes today's session. Thank you for your time.